Hi guys, I am really very excited to have you with me in this course. And I'm very excited to show you how to animate in After Effects. Believe me, it's gonna be an awesome journey. You will do fantastic animations. If you completed the earlier sections about text and shapes, you have a solid foundation to start creating graphics and putting them in motion. Guys, After Effects is all about fun, is all about experimenting, is all about options, about imagining and creating. So please get into that young spirit, the very young spirit, like a little boy or a little girl jumping around and trying to find out what can I do here. So please immerse yourself and let's dive in and have fun. You will start by having an overview on how to animate, and I will introduce you to lots of tips and tricks, including the motion path if you like. You will move on to learn about a structured method on how to create a motion graphics project. You will use this method to create your first animation. I would say this is an introduction. This is, how to work. It's easy, it's simple, yet you will be introduced to more tips and to more keyframe manipulation. Then we'll make it more complex. Here you are. You have a full video here. It's like news, where you create a more complex animation with many other layers, and you will learn more about sequencing and how to time the animation according to your priorities within the video. Then we'll move on to another animation here. The purpose of this animation will be to learn how to animate the shapes inside the shape layer. I would say this is just a start, but it's important that you start working on shapes inside the shape layers and what's the anchor point about and stories like this. Then we'll move on to complicate even more, and you have a full motion graphics project here. The animation and the timing and everything will become very important to have a very structured animation. Before you start animating, guys, there are two very important preferences that I want you to set and understand. They will affect a lot the way you are animating and what we call the motion path and the anchor point. So if you are on Windows, you can go to Edit and jump to Preferences. If you are on the Mac, I think you will find it under After Effects CC. You will find Preferences. I think it's the fourth option, third option. And I would like you from Preferences here, this will be identical submenu for Windows and the Mac. I would like you to choose General. Okay, you will have a big preference panel open. It has a group of options on the left, and it have the options of the group in the right section. The two major preferences I would like you to set is default spatial interpolation to linear, and the latest one and a very important one in After Effects CC 2018, it is center anchor point in new shape layers. So this one is supposed to center the anchor point in new shape layers. In any version that you are using in After Effects, please for now, because you will learn when to remove this preference, check the default spatial interpolation to linear. So make sure it's checked. Now, about this center anchor point in new shape layer, I want to explain to you first. So I click OK to set the default. Now, in any version before CC 2018, when you create a shape layer, just like this, the anchor point here is always in the middle of the composition. Cool, guys? So if you use the rotation tool and you select your layer, then if you rotate here, you are rotating around the anchor point. Also, if you want to scale or make it big or small, this is how would scale, you will also scale towards the anchor point or away from the anchor point. Cool. I will undo the scale and the rotation. If you are animating, you need to take care of the placement of the anchor point for the shape layer so you can rotate and scale, in the right way. To do that, you need to get used to the tool here called Pan Behind, or you can read in between bracket anchor point tool. The shortcut is Y. So I'm going to press Y on the keyboard to select the anchor point tool. Then click on the anchor point and move it around. Okay. If the snapping is not on, then you can press Control or Command on the Mac to snap it on the corners or on the binding box. If you notice here it's telling you it's in the middle on the line, and here it's in the middle on the horizontal line. So let's say I want to rotate it just in the middle here. I will press Control, here you are, and drag it to the middle. If your snapping is on, then the snapping is automatic and it will snap. Now if you use rotation, it will rotate around the anchor point and you are very happy. In CC 2018 now you have a major upgrade, which is actually wonderful. I will delete the shape layer. I will go back to preferences. Here you are. I wish you go to general with me here, and I will set now the center anchor point in the new shape layer to on. So I check it. So now if you're using CC 2018, please do that, and I will click OK. Now the difference is huge. Let's draw a shape layer here. Okay, if I release, the anchor point will jump and situate itself in the middle of the shape layer, wherever the shape layer is. Okay, let's select, for example, a polygon. Here you are. Release, it's in the middle of the polygon for all other shapes. Now this has made life much easier, because most of the time you would draw a shape and the anchor point in the middle. If you have many shapes and we start looking which anchor point, where is the anchor point here? So now life has become very easy, because the anchor point in CC 2018, when this preference is set, will jump in the middle. Now if you are in any version, of course, and you want to move it, you will have to go back to the anchor point tool, press Y, and you can move it. The snapping is on, so it can snap to corners, for example. Here you are, and you can move it the way you want, so you can rotate it or adjust the rotation if you like. Here you are, or even if you want to scale it, it will scale from the anchor point or towards the anchor point. Cool guys, so this is major, and in this course I will set this preference, and the anchor point of the shapes I will be creating will jump in the middle. If you are not using CC 2018, please take care of your anchor point always. So let's start our first project, guys. We are going to create this animation, and we're going to use the 3 steps: design, animate, sequence. Okay, let's take a new project. So we go to new composition here, and let's call it my company. I want to use 1280 by 720 and frame rate 30, and 5 seconds is largely enough for this project. We click OK to create the composition. Cool. Then you need to import the image. To import, you know very well by now, you right click, say import file, and you navigate to where you have downloaded the files or the videos and the image, and you can select the image. It will be very nice if you select your own image and change the words while I'm working, so you can create something that is valuable for you. And make sure I don't create a composition here, because the image size is a bit odd. I will use the composition that I already created. So I'll click import. Here you are. Now you want to drop the image inside the timeline so you can start working. You can click on it and drag it and drop it over here if you like, or just drop it in the timeline down. Okay, I will do that. I dropped it in the timeline. Now I will zoom out using the mouse scroll. You notice the image is huge compared to the composition 1280 by 720. So I need to resize the image. One way to do it is just to come and do like this, and then you are in trouble because the image is distorted. The best way to do it in After Effects, I will show you the long way, is to select your image or select your layer, for example, right click and go to transform, and you say fit to comp, or fit to comp width, or fit to comp height. To keep it on scale, the best is fit to comp width. If you can remember, the shortcut is Ctrl Alt Shift H, but I usually use right click. It's a long shortcut. Let's zoom back. You remember this is your magnification radio pop-up, so you fit to 100%. To not start moving the image every time by mistake, it's best to lock the image. You have the lock just over here. Lock prevents layers from being edited, that is moved or even scaled. So I will lock it. Now let's start adding a text. Click on the text tool, look at the character panel. Everything seems fine except the font size maybe. I'm using Arial for the whole course. Please feel free to use any font you like. There will be no problem, you will animate it. So you want to start adding the text. I'll click somewhere, really doesn't matter where, and then I will start writing. The first is graphics design. The font is white, I can't even see it, we're gonna put a background. I need to add more text, so I'll go Control Enter, I'm still in the text tool. Click over here and write the second one, which is motion graphics. Control Enter again from the main keyboard, and I can click to write the third one. It is web design. I finished adding text. I will go for the selection tool. Now I need to align this text. Okay, so very simply I'll just put them over here. That's okay, but let's use the align panel. Okay, all these have shortcuts. You will get to know them later. Now I'll select the 3 layers. Notice how you select. If you want to select from the composition preview over here, you select the first one, you press shift, select the second one, you keep on shift and you select the third one. Cool. If you want to select from the layers here, select the first one. You can press shift and select the last one, or you can select the first one, press control, second and third, the way you would like. But the shift only works here. Control does not work. Notice control is not working at all. So I will select the 3 of them. I will align them on the left, and then I want to distribute them. Now notice where are the anchor points. So they're gonna be distributed according to the anchor points. Here you are. Not bad, that's okay, but I think they are a bit big here. So I'll go to character and take it down, for example, to 50. To create the background, of course, you're gonna use a shape layer. Now make sure you deselect everything by pressing F2 and click and drag to create the shape layer. Wow, so we have a very odd color. Let's check the fill first of all. 100% we're happy, blending is normal, and it's a solid color. Cool for now. Maybe we'll come back and reduce the opacity. Let's take the shape layer now, click on it and drag it, put it just above the peak so it works as a background. Let's change the color. Let's move it over here to see the color. I will use the eyedropper now and pick a color from within the image itself. That will be interesting all the time. Okay, I will take this color, fine. And I'll click OK for the color. I can use the selection tool and select the layer and start moving the layer up and down to position it the best way I want. Good. Now how about getting some transparency on the background? That will be interesting. Let's go to the fill, move the fill over here and put some transparency while I'm previewing. Cool, just like this. Fine. Now the text is quite good, but you can add a drop shadow. It's very easy. Let's select a layer, right click on it, and you have here layer styles. Immediately I can put a drop shadow. I don't want to go into the details of the drop shadow. I like it, it's okay. Now for the other two, how about applying the drop shadow simultaneously? Select the first one, press shift and select the second one, and then right click and go to layer styles and say drop shadow. Here you are. So now we have created our design. That's what we like. Now I'll select all the layers, press Ctrl A or Command A on the Mac to select all the layers. Notice they have been all selected, of course, except my company, because it has been locked. Cool. I will twirl up, they will all twirl up. At this point, we have completed the design. We want to start animating. Let's start. Shape layer 1. Let's rename it. To rename a layer, just select the layer over here, press enter, and it's highlighted, ready to be renamed. Let's call it background. To commit, you press enter, or you could have clicked outside. Now I have here web design, motion graphics, and graphic design. These are going to have the same kind of animation. I would like to animate the scale and the opacity at the same time. You know, you can twirl down the transform and stories like this. That's cool. But there is a shortcut here. I'll select the 3 layers. And to bring up the scale, I press S. You see how the scale has been brought in. If I wanted position, I will press P. If I wanted opacity, I'll press T. If I want the rotation, it's R. But I want the scale and also I want the opacity. To get the scale and the opacity, I press Shift T. Here you are. Cool. So I have scale and opacity ready to be animated. Of course, I could animate the scale and the opacity for each layer at a time. Or, better yet, I can animate all the layers for the scale or opacity. Fine. Let's try this. I will go after 1 second. I will click on the stopwatch to initiate the animation for scale. Well, now notice what happened. By clicking on the stopwatch, I initiated the animation for scale for all the layers because they are selected. So you have the keyframes on each layer. Then I will do the same for opacity. Cool, we're really cutting time to animate. Of course, the scale is gonna be animated from the anchor point. Okay, guys? Now the anchor point here position is okay for me. If it's not okay for you, go back to the paragraph and try to put it left align. Maybe I forgot to mention this in the beginning. Let's return the scale to 100, first of all, without making mistakes. And then let's go back in time to 0, 0 and make the scale 0. Here you are. And then make the opacity also 0. Notice what happened now. You animated the 3 layers in the same animation at the same time, not one after the other. It really simplifies the work. Here you are. Okay, I'll play it. Fine, not bad, bit slow. Take care of it later. Now notice that every time is gonna go to 5 seconds. I have to wait 3-4 seconds just waiting for it to go to the end. I don't want that. I want to speed up. So I want just to stop at 2 seconds. It means I want to reduce my work area to 2 seconds. This bar here is your work area. Okay, guys? So you have work area and, you notice, work area and, notice the mouse pointer. And at the beginning, you have work area start. Fine. I can take the work area and drag it towards the timeline indicator. But there is better. I can just press N. N will bring the work area end to the timeline indicator. We are going to use this very many times. Now, if I press the space bar to play, okay, it plays until 2, it goes back. Pretty nice. Fine. Let's animate now the rectangle. I will pick the selection tool, open the background. So I want to animate it through position. Press P, it will bring the position. Let's go to the last keyframe. So you can use the navigator here. That's fine. But we have 2 very nice shortcuts. The K will take you to the next visible keyframe, the one that you can see over here. J will take you to the previous visible keyframe. So K will go to the next visible keyframe, and I will keyframe the position just over here. Fine. I'll go back and take the layer. Now, I'm not going to use the numbers like before. Click on the layer and drag it out. But you know it's going up and down with me. To make it go in a straight line, I just press Shift and drag it. So notice how I have done this. First, I click on it. The mouse pointer will turn black. I don't know if you can see it through the recording. Then I move a bit, just a bit, then press Shift, and then it goes straight. So it doesn't move up and down, just straight line here using the modifier key Shift. Let's play our animation. Not bad, not bad. But the speed, really, guys, the speed is not very good. But this is exactly the animation we want. It's very slow. So let's reduce the speed. It makes sense that when you want to speed the animation, you make sure you get the keyframes near each other. Now, in between keyframes, there is only 10 frames. And of course, the animation of web design, notice web design, is going to be pretty fast according to the scale. Here you are, notice? Cool. So let's undo this and select all the keyframes here. Let's stop the animation and drag them towards, for example, 15 frames. If I don't know where 15 frames is, so I can just play with the time indicator or simply go over here and write 15 is 15 frames. Oops, it jumps to the 15 frames here. Then I can drag my keyframes, the selected one, press Shift, and it will snap to the timeline indicator. Very convenient. Here you are. Fine, beautiful. Now it's time to start sequencing, meaning deciding what's gonna come first and what's gonna come last. Okay, so let's stop the animation. We can see everything. To sequence, obviously you need to see the keyframes for also to tweak the speed of the animation. To see the keyframes, of course, you can scroll down and you can see the keyframes here. maybe not so much, then turn down again, stories like this. Well, there is a shortcut for that that is extremely useful. You select a layer and you press the key U, just U, once. Here you are. Now, all the properties that have keyframes are listed. And of course, you can see the properties and their keyframes. If you press U again, then it will close the properties that have keyframes. Cool, that's very fine, but now you can do better. You can select all your layers. Here you are. I just created a lasso on all of them and press the U key once. If I press again, it will close them. So U to see all the properties that have keyframes, and subsequently you will see the keyframes, of course. Fine. So let's look at it carefully here. What do we want to achieve? We want, for example, the background to appear first, then the graphic design, motion graphics, and web design text to appear later on after the background. Not really when the background has settled at 100%, but just before it settles. So how do you sequence your layers? Well, sequencing your layers is about moving your layers around in the timeline with their keyframes. How do you do that? First, make sure that you are in your selection tool and not in your pan behind tool. With your selection tool, you can click on a layer and drag it. Here you are. You see how? So now you are delaying the layer to come in. For example, now you are at 27 frames. If you play your animation, you will notice that this layer will start appearing after 27 frames. Okay, the beginning here is called the end point of the layer. If you want to jump to the end point of the layer, you press I, and it's pretty important, you will see. Let's decide that background, we want it to come out at 10 frames only. To do that, you can start clicking on the timeline indicator and taking it to 10 frames, for example, or simply come over here, type 10, and it's much easier, you know, it jumps to 10 frames. Then you click on the background layer and you start dragging it around. If you press the shift key, then it will snap to the timeline indicator. Cool. So now we have the background delayed with 10 frames. That's not bad. Let's try now to sequence the web design, motion, and graphics. Let's say we want them to come at 20 frames. Here I'm at 20 frames. I can select one and start dragging it, or I can press shift, select all of them, or maybe one by one, like this, pressing Control or Command on the Mac, and click and drag. When I get to the timeline indicator or nearby, I press shift, they snap. Pretty cool. Let's look at our animation now. Very nice. Well, a bit nice, but now I have a slight problem here before I go on. This animation here is too slow. How about if you make it speedier? Well, there is one way to do it, is to start moving the keyframes around. The best way is to reduce the distance in between keyframes. This is the visual distance. For example, you click on one keyframe and you get it near. So you notice web design now is appearing or scaling up much before the rest. Here the animation is speedier. Here the animation has been delayed. Cool. Let's get it back here and let's select all our keyframes. To select all the keyframes, the visible one at least, you click and drag and create a lasso. Notice this is selecting 2 keyframes, for example, and all of them. Then you can click on one of them and decide to make it slow or speedy. Let's make it speedy, just over here. You can work with timing now and decide exactly I want them at 10 frames. Let's go to the end point. I press I and I want to go plus 10 frames. So I will write plus 10 frames, as simple as this, and the time indicator will jump plus 10 frames from where it was. Then let's select the keyframes again and go nearby the timeline indicator, press shift, it will snap. Let's look at our animation now. You notice they became a bit speedier. Okay, more speed will be even nicer. You see how I'm tweaking it? Very easy. Fine. Well, this is beautiful, but not that beautiful. How about if we sequence more? Meaning, we ensure that graphics comes first, then motion graphics, then web design. So we leave the graphic design wherever it is, then we take the motion graphics and push it in. Here you are. Notice there is a kind of snapping here to align your keyframes. And then we do the same for the first layer. And let's play our animation now. Here you are. Actually, it became a very nice animation. Another option I want to show you here, or a switch, is the motion blur switch. This is the motion blur switch. It simulates shutter duration. So you can add a motion blur to a layer, but it won't be visible until you enable the preview within the composition. This one will only enable the preview, will not add motion blur to any layer. They add it from here and you enable it from the composition. Notice now the motion blur. Okay, look at this layer. You notice web design now, it has motion blur. Look how it's appearing. If you remove motion blur, it will be just like this. Okay, very strict. With motion blur, it's like a fast car when you're taking a video. So motion blur can be applied to all layers, and to preview it over here, you need to enable it in the composition. Cool guys, if I disable it, it will go away. That's for the purposes of speed. Sometimes you might be blurring some very complicated animation and you don't want to see it, you know the effect, you just put it off. If you want to see it, you put it on and it's visible. But when you create your video, if motion blur is checked on a layer, it will be shown in the video. So this is just for a matter of a preview. Cool. So let's run our animation now and look at the effect of the motion blur. Much nicer. You notice guys, I will show you. Okay, you notice how the rectangle is with motion blur here, and over here the text coming with motion blur. So this is an option that maybe you'll use all the time. It's very nice and it'll give you this effect of a shutter. Now you are very capable to create lots of motion graphics on your videos and images. So please come to After Effects and start training, and I will see you in the next lecture.